The Sega Dreamcast was officially discontinued by Sega in early 2001, halting all hardware manufacturing and bringing an end to their business as a major producer of console technology. Games of course would keep being released, especially in Japan where the Dreamcast would keep getting new software for years after its demise. It was really quite something to see a system that supposedly failed miserably still being supported well after the machines that outsold it were long gone. Even once official releases finally stopped, there were dedicated individuals trying to keep the dream alive. Modders, indie developers, emulation enthusiasts, and garage programmers all chipped in to keep the software flowing on Sega's beloved Dreamcast. I confess that I would bow out of this community for a long time. The rigors of being married and raising a child meant that my game time had dwindled to a precious commodity reserved for my modern consoles. Earlier this year I would make contact with PixelHeart, a publisher and distributor that continues to release games for the Sega Dreamcast. I was finally in a place where I could try and play some of the releases that the community had created just for people like me. The first thing you'll notice about PixelHeart's games are the great attention to detail and production quality of the physical assets. Cases, manuals, and discs all look official quality, with clear images and solid color. Many of these games have reversible cover art on the manuals too, making your games look more like a Japanese or US release based on your preference. You'll definitely be happy with how they look next to your old game library. I decided to get a number of games that would really give me an idea of how well these types of releases fared. I wanted a few games I knew well on other platforms, a few games I had never played before, and even a game that was built upon a Neo Geo emulator. Needless to say, the batch I chose answered every question I had, and has motivated me to try even more of these types of releases, even the ones of other platforms. The first game I chose was Breakers, the rare as rocking horse shit 2D fighter that was released on the Neo Geo in Japan. Developed by Visco and originally released in 1996, few people knew this game even existed at the time, especially outside of Japan. It's a Street Fighter clone through and through, even down to the special moves and super combos. It's a nice playing game though, and is easily one of the Neo's easiest fighters to get into for die-hard Capcom fans. With emulation improving on the Dreamcast, individual releases like this have begun popping up in recent years, with JoshProd and RushOnGames releasing this custom version of Breakers officially backed by Visco. The quality of Breakers itself isn't an issue here. It's a fun fighting game that represents the conventions of its era well. The real question is, how is the emulation of a Neo Geo game like this on the Dreamcast? The answer is, good enough for most of you, and not even close for the diehards that remain. The first thing I noticed after popping Breakers into my Dreamcast was the throttled frame rate, which definitely takes a hit when compared to the Neo Geo original. It isn't choppy in the sense that it's slowing down, it's just simply missing some of the frames themselves. You feel this disparity strongly when you jump or when the screen scrolls fast left or right. What's shocking is that while this does play havoc a bit with your eyes, the gameplay is still responsive and easy to get into. Your specials and supers fire off without a hitch, and the animation still manages to look good overall. This means that many of you will still be able to enjoy this without too much complaint, but I do advise the more sensitive among you to be aware that this is not 100% accurate emulation. Next up is the classic 16-bit adventure game Out of This World, also known as Another World. It was developed by Delphine Software and originally released in 1991 on damn near everything. This Dreamcast release has been updated visually with more detail and better animation. The souped up VGA support looks just phenomenal, easily destroying the original version of the game. It remains hard as hell too, requiring trial and error with every new scene you come to. Most of you have experience with this classic, and the Dreamcast package of it here is quite good. Gameplay remains smooth and responsive, so if you were a fan of it in the past, or even if you're just looking for something decent to play on your Dreamcast, this is well worth a look. Another Delphine Software adventure game that would show up on the Dreamcast was Flashback: The Quest for Identity, originally released in 1992. Much like Out of This World, this one attempts to give you a great presentation of a classic game. The results aren't quite as special here, however. This is more a one-to-one recreation of the original, now with some smoothing filters to hide the pixels, but not offering the improved detail that Out of This World sported. It's still a solid game otherwise, and even allows you to play the game in its original 16-bit form exactly as you remember it. There are also language, music, and difficulty levels you can choose, as well as a few visual options. I was hoping for more polish from this one, but I'll take this classic adventure again without hesitation. The most important bits, such as the atmosphere and responsive gameplay, show up intact and ready to be enjoyed. It's another hard one that'll kick your ass many times before you see the end, guaranteeing newcomers and veterans hours of gameplay for their investment. With aftermarket shoot-'em-ups becoming a fairly regular occurrence on the Dreamcast, I wanted to take a few for a spin that I had never played. The first of these was Ghostblade, a vertically scrolling shooter developed by HughCast and originally released in 2015. This comes with Tate options and multiple ships you can choose from the start, and man oh man does the screen stay busy in this one. Between the bullets, enemies, and bonuses, there is rarely much real estate left that isn't covered by something. This is actually distracting as hell at first, and gamers not used to it will likely eat a few deaths until their eyes become acclimated to what they need to actually focus on. Thankfully, Ghostblade isn't a bad looking game. Many of the stages and enemies have solid detail and color, and it remains smooth most of the time. If I had to level criticism at this one, I would have liked more parallax scrolling to give a better sense of depth to the areas, and the difficulty could have been ratcheted up a notch with a hard or expert mode. It isn't going to move any of the top 5 Dreamcast shooters from their perch, but I still enjoyed this one quite a bit. I had also wanted some horizontal representation in the shoot-'em-up genre, so I went for Armed 7, which was just released a few months ago. Developed by Astroport, this felt really similar to a few Saturn shooters like Hyperduel and Metal Black. This comes with your normal staples of shields, power-ups, charge weapons, and secondary attacks, most of which can be customized at the beginning when you choose your options. There are also some difficulty options in place to aid beginners and experts alike. I like the visuals overall here, especially the nice parallax most of the stages have. Some of the finer details seem to get lost or muddled from time to time, making them blocky or animate poorly. It's also really short, with its 7 stages only taking a few minutes to beat even the first time through. Otherwise, this one isn't half bad itself, and kinda gives you that pre-rendered feel some of the later Neo Geo shooters gave us. The last game I wanted was a good old-fashioned hack-and-slash platformer, so I went with 2015's Volgar the Viking, first developed by Crazy Viking Studios, with Mark Hall doing the honors here. I had seen and heard of this game many times since its release, but never really sat down to try to play it, despite it being free to download and play for the Dreamcast. Now that it actually has a physical release backed by the original developers, I can proudly display it with the rest of my Dreamcast games. If you are a gamer that enjoys a challenge, get ready to have your ass kicked again and again, because Volgar is no joke when it comes to difficulty. When you start, it takes only one hit to kill you and sends you back to the checkpoint, which are few and far between. You do get power-ups that allow you to take more hits, but even then the game remains crazy difficult. Every new section of area will likely result in a new death, and stages progress slowly as you deal with each one of these challenges. It reminds me of the old arcade game Roston quite a bit, right down to its stage design and difficulty. By the third stage, the game is a straight-up nightmare of death and destruction to all but the most patient gamers. Funny thing is, you gotta love the gameplay in the throwback arcade difficulty that demands that you learn how to play it before you move on. This isn't going to hold your hand or baby you with easy respawns. You'll earn every inch of ground you make in this game. Fortunately, the graphics and animation are nice and the music fits it fantastically. Since it was released for free, you can give this one a shot to see if you like it, and if you want to support a prettier physical version, here's your chance. One of the great things about supporting a company like PixelHeart is that they can grow and start projects of their own, and not just distribute other developers' games. And that's exactly what they are doing for the 20th anniversary of the Dreamcast in the West. The recently kickstarted Arcade Racing Legends is an homage to Sega's vast library of arcade racing and driving games. This new project is aiming to bring you the feel of these games home in one package. Right now the game is purely in its prototype form, giving you an idea of how the cars and tracks are being designed. The latest version of the prototype even has a fully 3D rendered cab from Crazy Taxi to show you. The idea of this is phenomenal, and I really hope these guys nail what they're trying to do. Having access to the prototype has allowed me to play around with the gameplay and visuals to get an idea of where things are in the process, and if I had the developer's ear for some suggestions, I'd love to help. Aside from the feel of Sega's unforgettable gameplay, a big part of Sega's racing universe was its environments, set pieces, and atmosphere created by the often awesome soundtracks. There was always something cool to look at in Sega's racing games. From the mighty arches in Outrun, to the huge rise and falls of Power Drift, to the Ferris wheel in Virtua Racing, to the mascot-adorned wall in Daytona USA, to the underwater aquariums of Super GT. Every stage provided you a sense of wonder and entertainment. All this visual goodness was backed up by different musical scores that felt like it belonged to each track. Some were fast and energetic, while others were slower and more relaxing. Everything Sega touched was pure gold because it hit you on a three-tiered approach. It gave the goods when it came to gameplay, fun stuff to look at, and great music to take it all in. Be sure your game has all of these things. Another project that JoshProd and PixelHeart has in the works is a brand new Sega Saturn game. Yep, a freaking Sega Saturn game. While details are thin at the moment, I can tell you that it's a fighting game. It's a spiritual sequel to a game many of you already know, and it will use the 4MB extended RAM cartridge to its fullest potential. We should be getting much more information in the months to come. Supporting entities like PixelHeart, JoshProd, and RushOnGames really comes down to trying to expand the existing markets of retro gaming on Sega platforms. Not too many companies pay much attention to Sega's old hardware, especially the Saturn, so it's nice to see the attempt here. Like with any small company or Kickstarter asking you for your hard-earned money, be sure to further educate yourselves on who they are, what they've done, and whether or not any of it is right for you. Not all projects ever pan out, or turn out exactly how you want them, so track record often makes or breaks the community's involvement. I can at least attest to the fact that PixelHeart distributes a quality physical release for the Dreamcast, and I really like the new developments they have planned. I hope it works out for the best for everyone. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.